Hello, Seekers. Thank you very much for joining me today for this special episode. We're going to be taking a look at the Dungeon Fantasy role-playing game powered by GURPS. And this is going to be my attempt to show you how to get started with Dungeon Fantasy RPG as a solo player. I myself have been getting started in it as a solo player, and I've found some tools and resources and products I think that would help very much to help others get into the game. And GURPS has somewhat of a reputation of being quite difficult and challenging to get into, and certainly Dungeon Fantasy does make it easier. It kind of distills the game down into this very focused fantasy realm, and that alone is a big help. And with the other tools and products that I will show you today, I think it can be even easier to get into it. And just briefly, why I'm into Dungeon Fantasy, I do really like the level of detail that GURPS has. I'm really drawn to some of the simulation aspects that GURPS has, and I like that Dungeon Fantasy does retain a lot of those aspects, but of course gives you this very focused, dungeon crawling or fantasy, similar to D&D kind of a game. So for me, it's a really great combination of these very detailed and somewhat simulation type of systems, along with this, very fun and classic fantasy play of, just raiding dungeons and fighting monsters and looting everything and, having all your different fantasy characters. And then, of course, I really love that there is an incredible amount of freedom with your character building. It's essentially a classless system, but within Dungeon Fantasy, you'll see that the classes there are well-defined classes if you would like to play that way, but it is essentially a system where you can build any kind of character that you want, and character building is also incredibly detailed, and that's also something that I really enjoy as an RPG player. So that's why I am into Dungeon Fantasy, and that's why I would like to share my method of getting into it solo with all of you, and I hope that it could help even one person out there to get into it. And certainly I am no expert of GURPS or of Dungeon Fantasy, so this is really just someone who is a beginner getting into it and just trying to show you that other beginners could also get into it. Along with Dungeon Fantasy, what really helped to push me over the edge to get into this was learning about some products from the publisher Gaming Ballistic, and they are also producing some excellent products for Dungeon Fantasy. And actually, Alex T of Black Oath introduced me to a Kickstarter campaign for another adventure called Warlock Knight, and that's how I found out about the Sather's Bane here. So thanks for that, Alex. And what's really cool about Warlock Knight and Sather's Bane is that these are adventures that are kind of like a game book, and they sort of break things down into a more manageable adventure to follow. And they are also designed to be able to be played as a solo player in a solitaire mode. And once I saw that there was something like that available, I knew that was my chance to jump on board. And so what you can do here with Sather's Bane and also with Warlock Knight, which Warlock Knight has not been released yet for Dungeon Fantasy RPG. Some people may know about a lot of products from Gaming Ballistic, and I believe that there is a version of this for OSE called Dark Lord's Doom. And so some people may have actually played this before in a different system, but the Dungeon Fantasy systems are relatively new, and Warlock Knight is the one that's coming next. But you can see here that you have this, sort of this adventure that you go through, and you bounce around to different things as you make choices. And so it really does help you a lot to simplify things. But at the same time, this is definitely not some super lightweight adventure. Like there is a lot of depth here. You're going to have full-on combats, and you're going to need the full-on rules of Dungeon Fantasy to play the combats. So while it does streamline things for you a lot and gives you a way to play it solo, believe me, it is still a very detailed game to play, and there's still a lot of things to learning that are going on here. So it's really not some kind of watered down thing. It really does give you a real good picture of the full experience of playing Dungeon Fantasy while just making it a little bit easier for you. And I have played through Sather's Bane. I have played through it one time, and I'm certainly looking forward to playing through it more times. And in the second video of this is going to be 2 parts. In the second video, we will be looking at a little bit of Sather's Bane. We'll be at least playing a little bit of the very early beginning, so not too many spoilers. And we will also have at least one combat that we'll be playing. So, what do you need to get into this? Well, you're really going to have the Dungeon Fantasy RPG box set, which is what I have right here. This is the box set, and there's a lot of different things that come in the set, but the main things that you're going to need are a few of the books here. You're going to need the Adventurers book, the Exploits book, and probably the Spells book. The Monsters book you will not really need to play Sather's Bane, because it already has all of the enemies in there that you're going to need to deal with. They already have stat blocks and all those things in there, so you don't really need the Monsters book to play through that. And then Dungeon Fantasy box set also comes with an adventure called I Smell a Rat, which is a dungeon adventure. And then of course you're not going to need this because you'll be playing Sather's Bane. And if you buy the reprinted version, it does come with a fantastic dungeon grappling. I'm guessing at this point that if you buy the Dungeon Fantasy box set, new, sealed new, it's probably going to come with this in it, because only the very first prints didn't have this inside. And this is also another product from Gaming Ballistic. And right now for me, I kind of consider this to be a bit more advanced. So I have not really played with this or learned all the rules with this. And you'll see that as I'm going through this, there are definitely certain more advanced rules and things that I have not learned yet. And this is really just to try to give you a basic level to be able to jump in and learn the game before loading you up with the level of detail that you can get into. But that is one thing that I appreciate a lot about Dungeon Fantasy, is that there is quite a lot of detail that you can bring into the game when you're ready to do that, but you don't have to play it like that, of course. So yeah, in the Dungeon Fantasy box set, you're also going to get some maps that go with the adventure, and you're going to get some nice like little standees that you can use. I've already used them, and they're pretty cool. But anyway, in the box set, you are going to get all these books here and the other books that I showed you, and these ones are the ones that you're really going to need right here to get into it. And what else are you going to need? Well, you're going to need Sather's Bane, and I will have links to all of these things where you can buy them. This one you would get from the Gaming Ballistic website, so you're going to need that to play through it. And I would also highly recommend that you look at the YouTube channel of Chris Normand. He has some excellent tutorials to kind of get you an idea of what GURPS is, and I would highly recommend those. And also, if you end up wondering about some basic things that I don't go over, you're probably going to find a lot of answers on his website. I watched quite a few of his videos, and it was a huge help to get into it. So big thank you to Chris for all the videos that he's made. You also might have come across the Dungeons and GURPS channel, which is run by Enraged Eggplant, and he has some really great analysis and examples, combat examples and things like that, and they're all for GURPS. It's not specifically for Dungeon Fantasy, as are most of Chris Normand's videos, but they will help you to get an idea of what you can do within GURPS. And so I would definitely recommend checking those out, but especially when you're just getting started, Chris Normand really has a lot of excellent videos to kind of introduce you to the basics. And so this video is not going to be so much about teaching you exactly how to play, but it's going to be showing you my method for getting into playing the game solo. And I hope that it would be an easier and enjoyable method for you. But it's just one way, and I'm sure there are plenty of other ways. So what else would you need? So you would definitely need to have the box set. You would definitely need to have Sather's Bane, and those are the two, like, I think absolute must-have things that you would need if you do want to get into it in the way that I'm going to show you here. But there are still some other things that I would highly recommend, and one of those is the Delvers to Grow, and this also comes from Gaming Ballistic, and I'll have links to this as well. And Delvers to Grow what this does is it really streamlines the process of building a character. And this is somewhat optional because in Sather's Bane, you play a party of 4 characters, and they have 4 pre-made characters, and you could easily take those 4 characters and you could play them and go through the whole adventure that way, and you wouldn't even need to create a character at all. But Delvers to Grow is going to help you out a lot if you do want to create a character, and we are going to be creating a character today. And when I played through Sather's Bane the first time, I also created my own character. I just created 1 character, and then I took 3 pre-made characters. And that's probably what I would recommend to you, because that's going to give you a chance to learn how to create a character, which is still going to be very important if you want to get into Dungeon Fantasy. And of course, it's just a lot more fun to play at least 1 character that you created yourself. And you know, there's again, one of the strengths I think of Dungeon Fantasy or GURPS in general is the character creation system, and the character progression system. So I think it's something that you would really want to get into and learn as soon as you can. But yeah, definitely optional, because you could just simply play the pre-made characters, and that will allow you to jump into the game even faster. But I do like very much what you have here, and when we go through creating a character here in a moment, I will be using this to create the character, and it's also was very helpful for me. Now this is the omnibus version, which basically there's 3 or 4, I think there's 4 Delvers to Grow books, and the omnibus version just combines all 4 of them into 1 book. And I think right now this is only going to be available during Kickstarter events, and also for patrons of the Gaming Ballistic. So, but right now, at the time of this recording, there is actually a late backer shop open for the Warlock Knights Kickstarter that ended a few weeks ago. So I will try to put a link to that, where you can probably get some of these things, and you can find some other cool stuff that you can get in there that you may not always be able to get on the website. So I would definitely recommend checking that out as well. But anyway, yeah, very useful there. And what else would I recommend that you have? The other thing that you're going to need if you want to create your own character is you're going to need the GCS program, and I believe that it can work on Windows and Mac. I myself am running it on Windows. And one great thing about the program is that it is free, but it's actually a really great program that I'm almost kind of surprised that it's free, because it's really so good, and it does so much to help you to get into the game. So we will be looking at that in a moment when we create a character, and it'll be better just to show it to you than try to explain it, because it's incredibly detailed, and I know enough to get my way around doing a simple character build, but there's certainly far more to it that you can learn. And again, I would recommend checking out Chris Normand's videos, because he has some excellent tutorial kind of walkthroughs with GCS, and like I would have no understanding of it without his help on that. So definitely check those out. Other things that I would highly recommend that you have. So on the back of all of the books that come with Dungeon Fantasy, there are some quick reference, and these quick reference player aids are all very useful. So I would recommend printing them out so that you can access them as you're playing, and they're all highly useful. Now one of the sheets, this one right here, the like maneuvers table and postures and all that, this is an incredibly useful sheet. Now the only drawback with this one is that it is not actually in the Dungeon Fantasy box set. So if you buy the Dungeon Fantasy box set, you're not going to have this particular player aid right here, which I believe is a highly recommended one. So you would need to buy the GM screen. Now you can buy just the PDF version, which is what I did. So you can just buy the PDF version and just print this out. But the GM screen comes with these 4 sheets here, and then it also comes with another booklet that is extremely useful booklet. I believe it's called like the Guide to Creating a Character or something like that, and it's like about a 17-page booklet. And one of the aids that comes in that booklet is this table right here, and this is honestly a critical table of aids to get you through playing the game and everything like that. So I would highly recommend getting the GM screen, at least the PDF version. I do kind of think that booklet, that 17 page booklet, I really think it should have come with the Dungeon Fantasy box set. I think kind of missed an opportunity there. But anyway, you can just pick up the GM screen, and yeah, I would highly recommend that, because one of the first things that you're going to want to do when you get started in the game is when you get started like in combat, is you're going to want to know, like, well, how can you move, or what kind of moves can you do? So you really need this. And I do believe that these tables are found within the Dungeon Fantasy books, but they are not all in one handy page like this, all put together for you. So this makes it so much better here. So yeah, I would highly recommend the GM screen. It's not absolutely required, but highly recommend that. And one thing that you do not need to have is you do not need to have the GURPS Basic Set books. So the GURPS Basic Set, there's two like core books to that. There are many books within GURPS, which also is part of what makes it a little bit more difficult, for a beginner player to get into compared to Dungeon Fantasy, because there's just an overwhelming amount of resources and books for it. But the GURPS Basic Set consists of the GURPS Characters book and the GURPS Campaign book. And while I think those are great books to have, I recently got them myself. You do not need those books to get into Dungeon Fantasy. So you really do not need any of the actual specific GURPS books. All you really need is what comes in the box set, and it's got everything you need to play, all kinds of stuff. So you don't have to get those two. You can just get the box set. So just to kind of clear up any confusion there might be about that. All right, so what we're going to do now is we are going to open up GCS, and we're going to create a character that we will use for our adventure in Sather's Bane. So let's hop into GCS now and create our character. All right, so we are here in GCS, and I want to show you just how quick and painless really it is to create a character. And really the biggest thing that you probably would want to do is check out some of Chris Normand's videos where he introduces GCS. But hopefully I should be able to do a pretty good job of this to show you the basics of creating a character here. And we're going to create a barbarian, which is what I played in Sather's Bane for my first time. So when you open up GCS, you're going to see a screen like this. You want to come over here on your left. You're going to see Favorites, User Library, and you're going to see Master Library. And you may need to download something here. There should be a little button here. It might say Update Master Library or Download Master Library, something like that. So go ahead and click that and download it. And it should be pretty quick. It's not too big of a download. And then that's going to give you all of these different options that we have inside of here. And this is basically all of these templates for the entire game of GURPS, which is really just a massive amount of stuff. But all we really need to do right now is we need to get into Delvers to Grow. So we're going to click on Delvers to Grow, and we're going to expand that. And that's going to bring up all the things that we need to worry about for our purposes today. And in front of me, I have the Delvers to Grow book, and I'm on page 5 of the book where it talks about creating a strong Delver. And we're going to create a strong Delver at the 125 point level, which is the journeyman level. And we're going to be creating a barbarian. So we are going to double click on the strong Delver template, and that is going to bring up all of the different things that we would need to create a strong Delver. And of course, there are many different types. Strong Delvers are going to be your dedicated melee fighters, your warrior tanks and all that kind of thing. And of course, we're going to be a barbarian, so that's the part that we'll be focused on. And we'll also be focused on the 125 point template, which is called the journeyman. So before we do anything with all of this, we also need to open up a blank character sheet, a new character sheet. So we're going to go in here, and we're going to open a new character sheet. Okay, so we have our new character sheet opened over here on the right, and I'm going to change the name. My barbarian, his name is Barn, And so we got Barn the Barbarian over here. And I believe this is a setting that you can set. So right now it's set to default to 150 character points. So we're going to click this little button here, and we're going to change that to 125 points. And that's going to be our initial starting point. So we're going to go ahead and hit this little apply changes, little check here. And we now have 125 points, which is where we want to start. Okay, so it's pretty quick and easy to get into this. We just look over here at 125 points. We look at the Strong Delver Journeyman. We need to pick 2 disadvantage modules. We need to pick 1 basic and its matching advanced module, and we need to pick 1 upgrade module. So disadvantage modules are modules that actually give you points. So we're actually going to be starting off right away giving ourselves about 50 points because we're going to pick 2 minus 25 disadvantage modules. And we'll actually need to bring up the Delvers to Grow disadvantages table. So we're going to go ahead and double click, and we'll bring that up and kind of resize this window here a little bit. And we're going to pick the disadvantages that we want. Pretty much all these are going to be like a minus 25, but there are some things that you can kind of edit and change in here as you add them. So what I want is the Fortune's Fool. That's going to give us curious, impulsiveness, and overconfidence. And generally these are considered to be negative or bad traits, but they can actually have some very interesting and kind of funny effects in the game. But one note about this, within Sather's Bane, because it is a more of a kind of a game book, there won't be quite so many chances to use these kind of things, but you do have some chances to use them. But also for my purposes of keeping things simple, in my first playthrough, I did not worry so much about the disadvantage traits of the pre-made characters that were in my party. I only worried about my main character. So just a note on that. So I'm going to go ahead and add Fortune's Fool. That's going to give us another 25 points. You can see here minus 25 points to disadvantages, and we are now up to 150 points unspent. And then I'm also going to take the Nature's Ally. That's going to give us a phobia to machinery. We're going to be intolerant to urbanites, and we're going to have a sense of duty to nature. So, a lot of role-playing implications there and some very cool stuff. We're going to take a targeted intolerance, which is going to be only a minus 5 points. If you take a broad intolerance, that's going to be a minus 10 points. Basically, these are kind of different levels, and it's going to be more of a crippling negative effect if you take higher levels of these things. And then for our sense of duty, so you could have a sense of duty to several different things, but ours is going to be to nature. All right, so we've got 2 25-point disadvantage modules. So those give our characters, this gives our characters some kind of weaknesses, but we also have the advantage of getting 50 more character creation points, which is highly useful. So another thing that we want to set up here is we want to set up what we call quirks, because quirks are also going to give us some more points. You can have up to 5 quirks, and you can see here quirks, like right now we have 0, but if we added 5 quirks, that's going to give us 5 more points. So what I want to do is I want to click on my character sheet, and I want to have item, and I want to say new trait container, and I'm going to call this trait container quirks, and just go ahead and hit OK on that. And actually, I think we can close this disadvantages now, so let's go ahead and close that out. And where did our trait container go? Actually, I'm looking for that. I thought it would appear on our character sheet, but I am not seeing it. Where is our trait container? Oh, there we go. Okay, so it finally put it on our character sheet. All right, so we'll call that quirks, and we'll drop that in there, and then we are going to add a new trait. And so an example of a quirk would be something like, afraid of bugs. So, Barn is this big hulking barbarian. He's, a super tough guy, but he is actually afraid of bugs. And his base cost is going to be -1. And of course, when I say bugs, I'm talking about, just small little bugs. He's still very courageous if he had to fight, some big beastly bug or something like that. So then we would go ahead and we would add 4 more of these. So I could add something like, constantly cleans and polishes his sword. And then we would go ahead and add a -1 for that. And then go ahead. And so this would just be like quirk number 3 and -1. And then we're going to say quirk 4 and -1. Now, of course, you would actually go ahead and give some flavor to all these, but I don't want to take up too much time going through this, so we will just simply abbreviate that. And these could actually be a lot of fun when you get into role playing, but it's just a nice little detail thing that I'm not going to go too far on a tangent with. But that gives us a further 5 points with our 5 quirks here. So we're now up to 180 points that are unspent. So let's start actually building our character, what they're going to be right now. So we want to take one basic and its advanced module. So what is that going to be? That's going to be, typically it's around, I believe it's around like 60 to 80 points. So we have like barbarian modules, right? That's what we want. We've got the barbarian 1 and the barbarian 2. So let's just go ahead and take barbarian 1 and 2. That's actually 60 points, so it's not really that expensive. And we'll drop that in. So we now have spent 60 points on these advantage traits. And that gives us some things that are really nice for combat and for navigation and nature survival, which barbarians are known for that as well. And then now we want to take a 25-point upgrade module. So we're going to see over here we have our strong hero upgrade modules. And the one that I like to take right here is the side of beef. And that is going to beef up our barbarian. So he's got more hit points. He is stronger and harder to kill. And he's also able to heal up faster when it is time for resting, after combat. And of course, there's nothing that barbarians love more than combat. So if they can rest up faster and get back to more combat, that is what we want. So now we have created basically our traits package here. And that kind of gives us a foundation for the things that identify us as a barbarian. And another thing that we need to do is we need to look at our primary attributes. And the primary attributes for a journeyman is they have an increased dexterity, an increased health, and increased strength. So we're going to be increasing dex by 1, health by 2, and strength by 2. So let's go over here and just directly increase our dexterity. We're going to bump that up to 11. We're going to bump up our strength by 2 to 14, and we're going to bump up our health by 2, which is going to give us 13. And so we now have a nice strong character with a good amount of health. We actually have 17 hit points, which is pretty beefy already for a starting character. Most starting characters are probably going to be around like 12 or something, or 13 if they're not a beefy barbarian. If it's maybe a mage or an archer type character, they're going to be as low as 10 or 11 health. So we already have a nice amount of health there. Always good to have. And the next thing we're going to do, looking at page 5 on Delvers to Grow, we're going to spend 1 point on brawling. So let's go over here and look at brawling. Now, brawling is a skill or a technique. So we're going to add brawling. We drop that in there. You can see we've spent 1 point on it. And that takes brawling from what would be known as a default skill up to basically parity with our dexterity. So we now have 11 dex and 11 skill level in brawling. So if you leave a skill at default value, your skill is usually going to be something like Dex -3 or even worse. So by simply putting 1 point in here, we already have a much better brawling skill. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to spend 2 points on a ranged or a secondary weapon skill. So right here you can see these are secondary weapon skills. We're going to put 2 points in these for a journeyman. So I think we'll go ahead and we will take the sling and we'll drop the sling in there. Or maybe we should take maybe like a thrown weapon. Actually, yeah, let's do that. Let's get rid of the sling. So we just right click and delete, and we're going to do like throwing axes. I think that might be kind of fun. So we'll have throwing axes, and right now there's actually no points in that, so we need to put a couple points in that. We can right click and we can do increase skill level. We do that 2 times, and we're now at Dex +1 for our derived skill there of 12. And next thing we are going to do is we're going to spend 12 points on a 2-handed weapon skill, but you could also go with a 1-handed weapon and a shield. But while that is a safer bet, we are a barbarian. We do not care about safety. We only care about chopping everything up. So we're going to get the 2-handed sword, and we're going to drop that in there. And we are going to put a bunch of points into this because we want to be good at 2-handed sword. They're recommending 12 points. I might even put more than that. Now, one thing you can do when you're going to be increasing stuff by a lot of points, you can click on it to select it. You can do Control+, and we're going to do that 12 times. All right, so we have increased our 2-handed sword now to Dex +3 for our derived skill there, level of 14. And like I said, I may increase that further if I have some more unspent points. Right now we have 20 unspent points, but we still have quite a few little things that we're going to want to put points into. So turning to page 6, we can see that barbarians have some more skills that are recommended to use. They want us to spend 1 point on camouflage and naturalist, navigation, survival, and tracking. So let's go ahead and put camouflage and naturalist, navigation, survival, and you need to pick an environment. We're going to pick forest, and then you need to put tracking in there as well. Okay, so we just went ahead and spent 5 points on that. And so we've got 1 point in each of those. And then if we look further on page 7, we can see for the Barbarian level 2 for the advanced module, we are also going to want to spend 4 more points on our primary weapon skill. So let's go over here to the 2-handed sword, and let's increase by a skill level there. So that is now up to 15. We spent 4 points for that. That brought us down to 11. And we now have a +4 bonus on that. 16 points total has been put into that. And then we want to go ahead and put a point into fishing, hiking, mimicry, swimming, and wrestling. So let's find fishing. So we're going to drop fishing and hiking and wrestling and also swimming. We're going to drop swimming in there. And also the mimicry. Well, let's pick the animal sounds. And what else? What else can we do here? Fishing, hiking, mimicry, swimming, and wrestling. Okay, it looks like we've got all of those. So we still have 6 unspent points here. Now, 5 of those came from our quirks that we got. So that gave us a few more points there. Now, I think what we could do is we could maybe put another point into our 2-handed sword. Let's see if we can do that. Yep, so we were able to do that. And maybe we could put another point into brawling, possibly. Yep, so we put another point into brawling. And then let's see if we can put another point into wrestling. Yep, okay, so we have now spent all 125 points. And we have essentially, at this point, we have built our character, but the last thing that we need to do is our equipment, because we do not have a sword. You can see here our attacks that we have. We can only bite, kick, and punch. And you're going to have a sword, and you're also going to have some basic equipment to survive, walking around and doing all the things that you need to do. But we can go ahead and close out the Delver's build template there, and then we can go ahead and look at our equipment templates. And what we're going to want to do is get the basic kit. Now, it does tell you in Sather's Bane that you should put the basic kit on your characters. So we're going to get the basic kit. And this has a lot of stuff like a bedroll, rations, all of that kind of torches, relatively mundane stuff, but it is definitely required for the basic survival and well-being of the character. Now, we also need to have armor as well. And I don't want anything super crazy heavy, but I don't want to go too light either. So we will probably go with the guard's armor. This is 32 pounds of armor. Still much lighter than the knight armor, which is 73. So let's go ahead and take the guard's armor, and we'll drop that over there. Do we want to have front-only protection? Minus 50% to original weight. That sounds pretty good. So we won't have protection from the back. And I think that lowered the torso armor a little bit. Yeah, so here it says front only, and that reduced the torso armor a little bit by being front only. So now, by adding all this weight, we are now up to the light level of encumbrance. So our move has dropped down to 4, and our dodge has dropped down to 8. So that's something you need to be aware of. And that certainly gives you some incentive not to take too many things. And I don't know if there are any swords in here. Let's see if we can find a sword. Looks like no. So we can close the Delvers to Grow template there, and we're going to want to bring up the Dungeon Fantasy RPG over here on the left, and we'll bring up the Dungeon Fantasy RPG equipment, and we're going to just search for a sword. And I don't want a sword that is too heavy and also not too expensive, because our character is just starting off. So we'll go with a longsword. And right now we have added our longsword attack. So we have a one-handed swing, a two-handed swing, a one-handed thrust, and a two-handed thrust. And we have a basic damage of 2d plus 1 cutting damage when we're using two-handed. Now, of course, we are using it two-handed. We are a barbarian. We don't play around with shields. But kind of joking there, of course, you can have shields if you're a barbarian, but this barbarian does not. So now we have pretty much everything that we need. We have completed the process of building a character, and you can see that with Delvers to Grow. That is really quite a painless process. And were I not explaining everything to you, I could have done this whole thing in probably 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes at the most, to go through all this. So it's really that simple. So that is going to complete the first part of this series. So in the second series, we will be forming our party and putting them together, and then we will be starting out with the adventure in Sather's Bane. And like I said, I'm not going to get too deep into it to spoil a whole lot of stuff, but we will go through a couple of the first days or locations of adventure, and we will also get into a combat, and we will play out a full combat as well. And if anybody has any questions or anything, let me know. I'm going to try to link up all of these resources in the description, different books and products and channels and things that I've talked about, and also the GCS program. So look for all of those things in there. And once again, I highly recommend that you watch the videos from Chris Normand to give yourself a further introduction to understanding all this. But of course, we are going to be going over a lot of what some of these things mean when we get to the actual gameplay in the next part. So thank you all very much for watching. I hope that this was helpful. And like I said, certainly I am far from an expert on GURPS or Dungeon Fantasy, but I hope that this was helpful to get you started as a solo player. And of course, the next episode I hope will help with that as well. So I will see you in that one.